Today is the Feast of the Assumption, the 15th of August, a very, very old feast in the church. In the East, it's called the Dormition, and in the West, it's called the Assumption. And it was dogmatically proclaimed as such on the 1st of November 1950 by Pope Pius XII. Many people forget that there's a whole theology behind Mary that is very, very important for our spiritual lives. You know, our Blessed Mother was ever virgin. Our Blessed Mother was conceived without sin. Our Blessed Mother is the Mother of God. Our Blessed Mother was assumed into heaven. Our Blessed Mother is co-redemptrix. She stood with Christ, and she fully participated in his mission of redemption. Co-redemptrix means with Christ. And there's a whole icon that we need to contemplate in the life of Mary. These dogmas are not just pieces of information on a paper. They are living signposts, living realities that God is trying to say, look at my daughter, look at Mary, look at what I have done in her. Meditate on her, because she will lead you to where I want you to go. You know, Mary's whole mission is the mission of the church. It is to disciple people to her Son. It is to bring us into union with that God that she had always known. She was in complete union with him since her conception. She was never stained by sin. She never felt death. She was assumed body and soul into heaven. And so there's a whole mystery in her. Sadly, it's lost in the church today. We forget this marvelous reality of who Mary is, and it's lost in so many of our talks, in so many of our homilies. Have we not reflected and meditated on who Mary is? That what God has done in her. And what message is that to us? There is a Mariologist called Gabriele M. Roschini. He founded the Marianum. He wrote 125 books, and he acknowledges the Marian theology found in the writings of Maria Valtorta. So I do encourage people to read this book. And again, somebody comment, why are you always focusing on Maria Valtorta? Why are you always focusing on her works? Well, there's about 16 mystics, women mystics in the church that are extremely important, and Roschini mentions them here. And as Catholics, we do believe in private revelation, special revelation, that strengthens the life of the church from time to time. And this private revelation, obviously the church discerns over decades, over centuries even, to see, okay, well, what is Christ trying to communicate to the church through this private revelation? Okay, and is this helping the mission of the church? Does it if it contradicts previously held dogma or teachings of the church, obviously we discard it, but sometimes it holds up a magnifying glass to what we need to be focused on. And in this church today, where so much is spoken about women in the church, we forget the great women mystics in the church that God has used to teach us. Mystics like Hildegard of Bingen, Saint Mactildus of Helfa, Saint Gertrude the Great, Saint Angela of Foligno. Saint Angela of Foligno is a very important mystic, woman mystic. Everybody should really be studying her. She was a secular Franciscan from 1246 to 1309. Pope Benedict promoted her. And again, I recommend her. I really do recommend them people read Blessed Angela of Foligno. This was written in 1970. I'm nearly sure she, if I'm not mistaken, she's been canonized, but I need to look it up. St. Bridget of Sweden, St. Catherine of Siena, St. Mary Magdalene of Pazzi, Venerable Maria of Agreda, St. Veronica Giuliani, Blessed Mary Magdalene of Martinengo, Servant of God, St. Teresa Petit, Venerable Mary Archangel Biondini, Servant of God Cecil Bay, Benedictine. Venerable Anne Catherine Emmerich, Servant of God Veronica of the Heart of Jesus. Guillermina Ronconi, Servant of God Lucia Manango, and Maria Valtorta, who died in 1961. So these are some of the great female Marian mystics in the church. And today I want to kind of take you through some of the theology about the dogmatic foundations of the Assumption. And this is a course, a theological course given on Marian theology in Rome. So this is Roschini is trying to kind of give a course to us, to teach us. So it's going to be very theologically focused. But again, our theology has one aim, which is to give us a deeper understanding of how we need to know God or understand God, and also understand how God operates and what God did in Mary's life. Once our theology goes off course, which it has done in the last number of years, and is not directing us towards the mission of the church, which is to introduce us into the love of the Trinity, union with God. If our theology goes off course, we miss the beat here, guys. And again, I do encourage people to read Maria Valtorta's work, and again, other experts in this, because I'm no theologian, but the theology that you find in Maria Valtorta's works is very high. It's interesting, because Gabriele Roschini mentions it here, in the 1961 article in which they condemned Maria Valtorta, I'm just going to read you something. In the 1960 article published on January 6, the Osservatore Romano published an article about the poem of the man God, as well as a stern censor against it. However, in the article, it frankly admitted that we can find in this work lessons in Marian theology which show a complete knowledge of the latest studies by present-day specialists on the matter. So this is the Vatican admitting they were surprised to find lessons in Marian theology which show a complete knowledge of the latest studies by present-day specialists on the matter. These theological lessons are written in the very terms which a professor of our day would use. The article went so far as to insinuate that a knowledgeable Marian theologian could have helped Valtorta to write her work. This admitted that the Marian doctrine in this work is accurate. So this is the Vatican admitting that the Marian doctrine in Maria Valtorta's work is accurate. This was the Holy Office, actually, because that article comes from the Holy Office that was printed in 1960 when they were trying to censor Maria Valtorta. They had to admit that the Marian doctrine in the work is accurate, which is undeniable. But it also is undeniable that Maria Valtorta never read a Mariology treatise. She never took courses or lessons on the subject, nor was there a Mariologist to suggest to her what she wrote on the Blessed Virgin Mary. Maria Valtorta did not invent her Mariology on her own. That much is obvious. Nor is it the slightest possible that it could be the devil's invention. As Most Reverend Carnici, Secretary for the Sacred Congregation of the Rites, clearly put it, the devil has too little in common with the Blessed Virgin. As we shall see, Maria Valtorta's writings constitute the most melodious hymn rising from heaven to the noble Queen of Heaven. Anyway, so that's what the Vatican, the Holy Office thought about the Marian doctrine in her work. They thought that somebody behind the scenes was helping her. But as you know, as you read her handwritten notebooks, that's quite impossible. It's not possible. And so I'm just going to go through the dogmatic foundations of the Assumption. The foundations of Mary's Assumption consists especially in Mary's role as Mother of God and her unique privilege as the Immaculate Conception that is succinctly expressed in Jesus following dictation to the seer. For her, the end of life immediately ushered in the glorious life. The one who had borne the living one was not to experience death, The one who had not been desecrated in her humanity was not to undergo the profanation of the tomb. The Assumption is thus dogmatically rooted, first of all, in Mary's role as Mother of God. And the Blessed Virgin Mary speaking, I was also certain that my human flesh would not undergo corruption, bearing God had sanctified it. Also, God is life. When he saturates and fills a creature with himself, his actions are like spices which preserve from corruption of death. I not only remained immaculate, I not only was united to God in a chaste, fruitful embrace, I also saturated myself with God's emanations, right down to my deepest recesses. For God was hidden in my womb, busy veiling himself with mortal flesh, but I could not imagine the joy which the eternal goodness had in store for me, his handmaid. He granted me to feel with my body the touch of my son's hand, his embraces and his kisses. He granted me to hear his voice with my ears again and see his face with my ears. I had not even desired that. It would have been enough for me, I thought, for those joys had been granted but to my spirit. My whole being would have been filled with happiness. And that's in the 10th volume of the poem. The second foundation for the privilege of the Assumption is the fact that Mary was similar to Eve before Eve fell from grace. Preserved from sin, the Virgin Mary had been preserved from the consequences as well, death's corruption. And that's really important we understand here. Mary is the new Eve. So God is going to paint in her his original plan before the fall, what Mary would have experienced if she had remained faithful. So to say that Mary just suffered death like Eve, that doesn't show us the full picture of God's plan to her. Do you know what I mean? It's quite clear the foundations in which the church has used to proclaim this reality which we know happened. And that's why, as Catholics, it's important that we meditate on the icon that God is painting in Mary. You know, the very picture, the message that God is painting in Mary. This is important for us. And to understand, well, what God is trying to use with her mission in the church, or communicate with her mission in the church. God is sending a message to us with Mary. It's very profound once you go down this road of understanding who Mary is. You see this whole plan of Mary, mother of the church, this mater ecclesia, this important role that she has. You know, and sadly, oftentimes in our theology, we're becoming very Protestant and forgetting her role in our lives and in the church, and her example as a model, not just for men and not just for women, but for the whole church, to Jesus through Mary. Anyway, go on. One day, St. John declared to the Virgin Mary that she, like her son, would ascend to heaven. The Virgin Mary replied, "No, I am not Jesus, you know. I was born humanly. Yes, but without original sin. I am just an uneducated fisherman. I don't know anything about doctrines and scriptures except what the Master taught me. I have a feeling that you will be granted what Eve would have had if she hadn't sinned. Actually, what you get will be far better, because you were not the wife of Adam, a mere man, but God took you as his spouse, and you will give the earth a new Adam which remains faithful to grace. When the Creator granted our first parents, he did not intend them to die with their bodies corrupting. Of all the bodies God created, the human body was the noblest and most perfect, because it had a spiritual soul and God's free gifts. Because of this, human beings could say They were God's adoptive children. So God wanted them, and them alone, to pass away from the Garden of Eden to the heavenly paradise. Now, no one sinned ever. No sin ever stained your soul. Not even the notorious sin everyone inherits from Adam. It is the common lot, but it did not touch you. God preserved you in an exceptional way, a unique privilege, because he always destined you to become the ark of the word. After all, every first ark has always had to be the most pure, even though, alas, the things in it, the tables of the law, have turned cold, dry, and dead because people of God haven't kept the law as they should have. But you remained faithful to grace, you the second Eve, so I have a feeling you won't experience death. At that, the Blessed Virgin Mary seems to object. In reality, she is trying to find out. My son, the second Adam, was grace. He always perfectly obeyed the Father and me. He still died, and what a death it was. Jesus replies, Mother, he came to be the Redeemer. He left his Father in heaven to take flesh, to redeem mankind with his sacrifice, to give them back grace, and so raise them to the rank of adopted sons of God, heirs of heaven. He had to die. He died in his most holy humanity. You died in your heart with your witness when you witnessed his horrible torture and his death. You already suffered everything to be his co-redemptrix. I'm just a poor fool, but I have a feeling you won't be corruptible. You can't be. You were the true ark of the living God. The pillar of fire protected Moses' ark as it led it towards the promised land. In the same way, God's fire will draw you towards its center. Aaron's stick didn't dry and didn't die, even though it had been cut from a tree. It budded and produced leaves and bore fruit and continued to live in the tabernacle. In the same way, you won't die like a plant that dries up. You will live forever, and your whole being in the eternal tabernacle of heaven. Of all women that ever lived and will ever live on earth, you are the woman God chose. In Joshua's time, the waters of the Jordan were opened so that the ark could go across with its bearers and the whole people. In the same way, the barriers that Adam's sin put between heaven and earth will open before you, and you will pass from this world to heaven everlasting. I am positive about it. God is just. What he decreed to those who don't have hereditary sin or willful sin in their souls still applies to you. It is Jesus who told you that? Asked Mary. No, Mother. It is the Spirit Paraclete, the one the Master told us about, who would reveal to us truth and all things to come. The Comforter just told me right now, speaking to my spirit, so the thought of losing you won't be so bitter. O Blessed Mother, I love you and venerate you as much as my mother, more than her, for all your sufferings, for all your goodness and your holiness. Your holiness is inferior to none but that of your most holy Son. It is greater than all present and future saints. You are the greatest of all saints. John, moved, prostrates himself, venerating her. The Blessed Virgin Mary spoke to Maria Valtorta. The Creator had destined human beings, once they had lived, to pass directly from the Garden of Eden to the heavenly paradise without dying. The original plan. As evidence of this, his first creative thought concerning mankind, God wanted me, since I was immaculate, to come to heaven, the everlasting kingdom, in body and soul, as soon as my life on earth would come to an end. I am the unquestionable manifestation of what God had conceived and intended for mankind, an innocent life that knew nothing of sin, a calm passage from this life to eternal life. As someone merely crosses a threshold to enter into a palace, so man with his whole being, both material body and spiritual soul, would have passed from earth to paradise. His being received from God would have reached complete perfection at once, both in flesh and spirit. This perfection was meant in God's mind for all creatures that would remain faithful to him and to grace. This perfection would be reached in the fullness of the bright sunshine which God, his eternal Son, fills heaven with. Once I was assumed, body and soul, into the glory of heaven, God placed me before the patriarchs, prophets, saints, angels, and martyrs. He said, "Here is the Creator's masterpiece. This is what I, God, created in my image and resemblance. Of all the children of men, she is the most faithful resemblance. She is the result of the Creator's perfect work. She is the marvel of the universe. Her being possesses both created matter and that which is the most divine in spirit. Her spirit is eternal like me. Like me, it is spiritual, intellect, free and holy. Her flesh is the holiest and most innocent of all. Every other living thing in all three kingdoms of creation has to bow before her. She is the manifestation of my love to mankind. I wanted mankind to have a perfect body and blessed destiny of eternal life in my kingdom. She is the proof that I have forgiven mankind. By the will of the Trinity of love, I have granted it rehabilitation. I have recreated it. She is the mystical touchstone, the wedding ring between God and humanity. She rolls time back to the first days. She gives my divine eyes the joy of contemplating an Eve such as I created her, nay, even holier and more beautiful, because she is the mother of my word, and she is the martyr of the greatest act of forgiveness. So that's something to reflect on about today. There is another account in Maria Valtorta which describes her Assumption. But I suppose the lesson I want to give anybody looking at to this video is to meditate on the icon that God drew in Mary. There's a message there. God sent a message in Mary. In these realities, which are the dogmas, are signposts. So imagine Mary and imagine 5 arrows pointing at Mary. This is really important. This thing called a rosary has 5 mysteries, right? 5 mysteries. Each mystery is also a spiritual reality of Mary. So there's 5 arrows pointing at Mary. And these 5 arrows reflect a reality that God, a spiritual reality that God is trying to teach us. What God has done in her. Because once you enter into these mysteries, these arrows, this dogmatic message, Mary starts to reveal what is her mission and what she's trying to do in us, which is really back to God. She's this tireless mother trying to help us return to God. So this dogma, and maybe non-Catholics will never understand this, and it's very, very sad. But Mary isn't a redundant spiritual reality in God's plan. She is pretty central. She is pretty important. And so we can't discard the prophets, the mystics, these women, the 16 of them that Roschini mentions, that God has used to reveal truths to us about the person he created and chose to bear us the Redeemer. And that's what I encourage people to do. And I would love to see more of this spoken about in the church. So every time you pick up a rosary, remember the 5 arrows, this picture. God is trying to direct your attention to something that he did in Mary. I've painted something here. I've sent a message to you here. I've created this beautiful mother, my spouse, my daughter, mother of the church. This perfect creation that is in everything an example of our spiritual journey towards God. She stands on the other shore with a light drawing us to God, you know. She is always there. So when you pray, Mary is always leading you to her Son. There's layers and layers and layers of beauty that you can encounter when you start meditating on this. And the church will one day recognize that fifth arrow, that fifth dogma, her role, you know, standing beside her Son. The day the church was born, she was there with our Lord to birth the church, and she felt the pain of the birth of the church. And so as co-redemptrix, mediatrix, advocate, she is a powerful intercessor, a powerful guide to us as we journey along this transformational path to union with God. And so I really, really, really encourage Catholics, don't forget today when you meditate on the Assumption, don't forget to meditate on the whole beautiful icon. I'm using this image in the sense that everything that God did in Mary and what she is doing today. God has given us this absolutely incredible mother, spiritual mother. And the Rosary, with its 5 mysteries, 5 decades, in a way, these five elements point to Mary, point to who she is, point to what she is doing. God bless you. Take care. Bye bye.